the hardest part for me.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to my son's next vlog of Christians Make Bad Art. I am Andrea Grace, his mother. This is my son, Jesse Watts, who's struggling to get words out this evening.
I think we're going to keep that.
And is feeling a little giggly.
Well, I'm really sleep deprived.
He's very sleep deprived. He is a young father of a young toddler. My pride and joy, of course, my grandson.
And I think I also just realized that I wore this same shirt in my second video. People are going to think I only own 2 shirts.
He only has 5 shirts. And you've seen one of them, so...
Oh goodness. Well, yeah. Welcome, everyone, to this next episode. I'm really excited. My mother, Andrea Grace, is in town. And so we had a moment to talk, and I just got to thinking, like, I really want you all to hear her story, because her story really is a really tragic tale of being a Christian artist, but a really redemptive one as well. And so, for those of you who don't know, which is most of you, my mom has been a musician for your whole life. Could you just give everybody just a short little bit of history as to what you have done in your life?
We have several generations of musicians. So I was raised in a family of musicians. Both my parents, my mom's a drummer, my dad's a conductor and a trumpet player and singer. So for most of my life, I have been in the music world. Studied privately on a few different instruments. Mostly, I think my main main instrument is my voice. And have done a lot of musical theater and done probably every incarnation of singing that I could do. I was in a female a cappella band, vocal a cappella band. I was in a Christian pop band that did coffee shops for a while. I was in a duo that did kind of Tori Amos, angsty coffee shop music for a while. You probably don't. He's like, oh my gosh, I remember all of that now. I sang a couple times for his dad's band. I've sung with a symphony orchestra a couple of times. So I've just kind of done a smattering of all kinds of things. And then the one I believe that we're going to talk about is when I embarked with a group of fellow church friends to form a group called Brethren.
Yes, so that's really where I kind of wanted to single in on, because it's a time in my life that's very blurry, but yet I still have very vivid memories of that time. So basically, if I'm remembering things correctly, is you were a teacher and you left your teaching job to go into full-time ministry in this band called Brethren. And what happened when you told everybody? Like, what was the process of making that decision?
Well, when we believed that this was something God called us to, it was very difficult, because the woman that was kind of the impetus for it starting, she was not in a full-time job or anything like that. She had a very supportive husband who had a good job, and he was supporting the family. So she was kind of free to pursue this as a calling. I was not as free to pursue without really considering what this would do. I was a single mom at the time and sole support for you and Holden. Mm-hmm. And so I put out a fleece, and my fleece was Psalm 139, and I wanted to hear Psalm 139, and that's how I was going to know that God was truly calling us to this, and I was supposed to quit my job completely and follow. And for the next 24 hours, I watched every Christian show possible, trying to hear Psalm 139, Psalm 139. And I did. I watched and watched and watched, and nothing. And I don't know if you remember this, but we were on our way to school, and suddenly on the radio came Ain't No Mountain High Enough.
Which
is essentially Psalm 139. Ain't no mountain high enough, ain't no valley low enough,
true. Huh.
Ain't no river wide enough to keep me from getting to you.
Mm-hmm.
And I got the Holy Spirit flush and the rush, and I was driving and I started crying, and you guys were singing it in the back seat, and you didn't know why it was such a big deal. But that was my sign that we were supposed to go into full-time ministry. So for the next couple days, I tried to get together with my principal and tell him that I was not going to be coming back. And I knew it was going to be a big deal, not only for my colleagues in my school where I was teaching, but for my family, because I am a single mom, and how would I support my family? And it was scary.
I mean, you took this leap of faith, and you're saying, okay, God, I trust you that you are calling me to pursue art.
Yes.
Art for the sake of God's glory.
Yes.
And that, a lot of people do that, but that leap of faith, I remember being really, really big. I remember Grandma and Grandpa not being very excited about it.
Nope.
And just like,
they would, because they were concerned about your well-being.
I mean, anybody,
well-being,
when you're quitting your job that is a steady income to do art, which is not known as a stable profession.
Christian art.
Yeah, Christian art, which is a totally different...
Really not known as a stable profession.
And really that's what we're talking about, is that, there is this stark difference between what we would call Christian art and secular art. And what I'm wanting this podcast to show is that line shouldn't be there. Is that basically Christian art and art, there isn't really a difference. It's just, and really, but what happens is, it's when people draw that line really, really thickly, and say, no, our art is Christian and it must say Jesus this many times in the song, or, that's when things get really, really sketchy. So back to Brethren, is you quit and you started, you had a business model, you were doing everything right with the band. You had a board of,
we had registered. We were a registered 501c3 nonprofit organization. So there is a model that you're expected to follow. You have to have a board of directors. You have to have somebody responsible for this and this and this. And we followed it to the letter. We did everything right, which was the only thing, including having our pastor was willing to be on our board. And he came with so much clout and respect that was when my family said, okay, well, they are legitimately trying to make this into something that is going to be sustaining and supporting. And the fact that it is a ministry is a bonus, because we know there is a call there. And being raised by teachers, they certainly understand being called to something that you are passionate about.
And so you had 2 male vocalists, 2 female, including yourself, which was just like Avalon. So you guys were kind of trying to model yourself after Avalon, which, for those of you who don't know, was a big Christian pop band.
Testify to Love.
Testify to Love.
Right.
Yeah. Great song. I love that song. But,
for as long as I shall live. Yeah.
But it is, they were like the Christian pop band at that time. They were so good.
Good.
And so I think you guys were trying to, like, oh man, that's successful. Let's maybe try to do something similar. Is that kind of what you were thinking?
Yeah, so much so that when we started, we were covering Avalon songs. We were Avalon,
Yeah.
The sequel. Yeah.
So as you guys went on, you toured a little bit here and
that
there.
first group almost dissipated almost immediately. The fourth guy did not quite have the full support of his spouse to be a part of a group that was traveling with other women, and I was the only single woman, but it gets weird. It gets sketchy.
because it's Christian art. There's different baggage or maybe different pressures that are put on it. Would you agree?
Well, definitely. And I think there was just, I don't know, the woman that I was in ministry with frequently came up against other women that were not in favor of her friendships with their spouses.
So before we get to that piece, which is crazy,
down the road,
down the road, you guys toured a little bit, and you were meeting with well-known Christian artists. You were starting to get because you were partners with World Vision.
Yes.
Before all the World Vision-y stuff happened, and then, but then, so you were trying. The ultimate goal was to get big, right?
Yeah, we really felt like this was something God called us to, and if He called us to it, then there must be a trajectory behind it that was going to rocket us to some sort of fame.
Did you really think that you would be as big as Avalon? Or
I did not expect that because of my experience through my family and friends and all these musicians, and I just know how hard being a musician is.
It stopped. It stopped. We're going to keep going, though. We'll do the audio.
Okay.
So, video is done, but we're going to continue audio. So, half vlog, half podcast. So, anyway, continue.
A plug?
A plug, yes. A plug.
Woo! We just came up with something new.
A plug.
A plug. I'm sorry, where were we?
I think we were at... oh, shoot.
Did we think we were going to be...
did you think you were going to get famous? Or
I hoped so, but because I knew the reality of how much work it takes, and every time somebody quits, you start over, especially as singers, because you got to get somebody else. Well, I guess you do with anybody.
Yeah.
You have to get the new musician caught up to what everybody else is doing, and so when the first guy left, then there were 3 of us, and we did a lot of touring with that threesome. But that became difficult too because the third person was struggling both with his sexuality and with another passion of his, which was theater. And so we would book this tour, and then he would get in a show and say, we can't go touring that weekend because I'm in a show, or we can't tour for that month because I'm in a show. And it finally came down to, I said to him, the biggest difficulty that I see is that there's only 3 days in a weekend, and we're both trying to deal with it, and we can't book twice. I mean, I personally had more of an issue with that aspect than I did with his sexuality, because I think everybody's struggling with something. And if we're being authentic, doing what we were doing, it was important to be real with our struggles. And that actually kept us out of a few churches that didn't like that.
I was going to say, but at that time, the rest of, pretty much the Christian world, the talk around homosexuality was not, people weren't affirming it yet.
No.
You know what I mean?
You had to be healed of it.
Yeah, healed of it, or be celibate. Which there's still a lot of churches that follow that, but now we're seeing a lot of churches move into, gay affirming. And
that God knows the condition of your heart.
Yeah.
And there is a difference.
So, but because of that, it kept you out of churches.
Yeah.
Right?
It kept us out of some churches. And really it was, for him, he just had a huge time of, he needed to figure out who he was going to be and how he was going to be who he was going to be. And it just came down to the healthiest place for him to be was to be free to pursue a show or whatever and not be locked in to what we were doing. But we were all very sad about it. And he and I have remained good friends. I don't know what his friendships are beyond that. That's conversation part 2 in this plug. But
So here's my where I want to hear more is, you had known other artists, including a fairly well-known Christian artist, Jason Gray, who, if you know anything about Christian radio, you've probably heard Jason Gray's name and heard his songs. He's written some really great songs. But he didn't his name isn't Jason Gray. It originally was Jason Gay, and you guys played with him a lot, and he was a totally different musical style. I remember when I heard him as a kid, he was so good.
Inventive and...
I mean, really, really talented. But then all of a sudden, I heard him on the radio, and his name wasn't Jason Gay anymore. It was Jason Gray, because the Christian world wasn't going to accept him, or he wouldn't get on the radio if his name was Jason Gay. They wouldn't say it.
Right.
And then, it's not like he was gay.
He had a family, he had twins, lovely
just a
wife.
name thing. But because of the name, and then the music totally changed.
Yep.
The music was totally different. So it was like, what did you not do right to get to where he got?
I think some of it is like it is in any music genre, whether it be Christian or anything. Sometimes it's where you are and who you know. And he really was living in an area where with some other already well-established Christian artists that he knew personally, because so often we find out, they're part of this church or that church, and they play on the worship team.
Yeah.
And then when they're being their big selves, they go off
just a
away
matter
from
of
the church.
connections.
So it was a matter of connections, I think. Plus, I was writing songs, but we had to we didn't have instrumentalists with us full time. We were performing with pre-recorded tracks that we had created, a good portion of them. Some of them were already created, but many of them we had created. But that also makes it different. And we were a little bit older.
Yeah.
We weren't the young female 15-year-old Christian artist who is singing with tracks, but she's also 15. So, whatever, you can do that. But we didn't have that.
So you never broke that wall. So was there a point when you realized, like, we're never going to get to that level?
I think some of that started to break down too for me personally. It's so hard to say what Lori, the other woman in the ministry, what her perspective was, because I think I didn't realize how different our ideas about it were from the beginning.
Where you thought you were going and where she thought y'all were going.
Yeah. And so I think when we talked about we met these other artists, and some of them we had such high opinions of, and these were big people, and some of them were not who you thought they were. And, and you start to realize this is not just God's game that we're a part of. We are also part of Satan's game, and he's going to try to knock us off the block.
Yeah.
And make sure that, we might get to the top and everybody might think that we're okay, but at some point he's going to prove to everybody that we're not.
Yeah.
And then that's going to tear down the ministry. And lo and behold.
Yeah. So, getting to that part, you guys were doing fairly well for the level you were at.
We were, and we had joined up with a band, and we were doing some touring with a band, which allowed us to do some of those things that we couldn't do on our own, which was play our music, but with a live band. And
then something happened.
The person that I was in ministry with became close friends with somebody from that band, a married man. She was also married. And then things kind of started going crazy from there. And I didn't know exactly how crazy until a little further down the line. There was a lot of deception and I was so hoping that everything was fine and everything would just work out. And I was trying to hold her accountable, which she wanted, but then she didn't want it. And I don't know how much you want me to go into it, but ultimately she would be leaving town to go meet up with him, not telling any of her family that she was leaving town, and but asking me to go pick up her kids and take them to school. And I don't know if you remember this, but we picked them up to take them to school, and they were crying, saying, "We can't get a hold of our mom. We don't know where she is. Do you know how to get a hold of her?" And it just hit me like a ton of bricks that,
oh man, I do remember
this was horrible. This cannot happen anymore. And I called the head of our prayer team for our ministry, and I said, this is what's been going on, and I revealed everything. And then we were prayed over, unbeknownst to Lori. We were prayed over, and I just felt totally convicted that, if we're not living what we're preaching, we cannot do this anymore. We just can't do it. It doesn't matter. And so at the point that she was back close enough to being back in town, I just called her and I told her. And of course, I was then not her friend because I wasn't standing behind her, and I was very uncomfortable with what she was doing to her husband and to her 4 kids. I was uncomfortable with what the other man was doing to his family, because he had 4 kids himself. And there were lies being perpetuated all over the place. And I just couldn't, I could not do that anymore at all. So, but the difficulty was she was not telling the truth to her family in town. She had told her family that she and I were in a relationship. They were doing drive-bys by our house because they thought I had somehow pulled her away from her family, and I was having nothing to do with her at all. It was a bigger divorce than my divorce.
Yeah.
In many ways, because it was a calling.
Yeah.
Because it was God. Not that marriage isn't big, but sometimes by the time you get to divorce, you've sort of worked through
you've had time
all
to
of the, you've mourned the death of this relationship. And so this was horrible. And I physically could not sing anymore. I couldn't sing.
So that's what I wanted to talk about is, so the band broke up.
Yep.
And I mean,
humiliating.
not just like broke up, but completely imploded. I mean, it was horrible.
And I was left to try to explain what had gone on
to everyone, because she disappeared.
She was telling a different story. She disappeared, but she didn't. She disappeared, but she would, because her family all went to the church where our ministry team was from. There were, I was being referred to as Judas because apparently she was the Messiah. I don't know. Anyway.
Here's, and really this is, this has been a lot of background. But
yeah, sorry.
The background is going to make what comes next so rich, I think. So because of that experience, it changed you as an artist and as a Christian, right?
Absolutely.
And so talk about that. How did it change you as an artist who is also a Christ follower?
It changed me in that I really have not listened to Christian music since then. Not on a regular. It becomes, anytime I hear one of those songs that was something that we did or something, I have too much residual anger that I haven't dealt with, which I'm beginning to. It's been such a long time. It's time to deal with all of that. But I think I just kind of set it to the side, which is not a healthy thing to do, but that's what I do. But I haven't listened. I don't regularly listen to Christian music. I will listen to an artist, or if a friend says, oh, you should hear this song that's really meaningful, I will listen to that. I listen to your music, of course, because I love it. It's not that I have something against it, but it's almost painful. It just brings up so many reminders of what we went through. And then I don't know, I listen to the music and I wonder if the people are genuine, or if they are who they project.
I mean, and I hope this isn't like too presumptuous of me, but you've basically stopped creating since.
Absolutely.
Which in, as artists, creating is basically our breathing. And when we're not creating, it's basically like a slow suffocation.
Absolutely.
But it's not that you don't want to create. You clearly do, because we've talked about it over and over again. You want to create. You want to continue your art, but there's this wall there.
Yeah, I have a lot of fear and trust breakdown now. Even with things that aren't necessarily specifically Christian, but because I carry that with me every day. My students at my school know what my faith foundation is. I'm very open about who I serve and how I walk and how I live. But it's scary. It's...
And I think, on the last week's episode, I talked to a good friend, Ryan Bayron. He's a local artist here in Dallas. And we talked about the vulnerability of art and how creating and putting yourself out there as an artist Christian or not,
Yeah.
is a very vulnerable thing to do. But one of my favorite quotes that he said was, if God has presence in your life, then he will have presence in your art if it's honest.
That is excellent.
And really, but so I wonder, like, what would it look like for you to create again? Like, what do you think would need to happen for you to kind of jump back into the art world?
I think for me, it would just need to be putting my past in God's hands fully, and letting his new creation be the one that creates, and not thinking about, because truly we are constantly changing and being renewed every morning, and God's faithful to us every single day. So I am not who I was then. I am not the mistakes that happened then. And I don't need to carry that shame. And that just recently has been something that that has come to me, is that a lot of the things I'm experiencing now and a lot of my fear is wrapped up in the shame of not being, of it not being successful when he's the one that called us to it. So I've let my daddy down.
Yeah.
And for anyone who knows me knows my earthly father and my heavenly father would never be the one I want to let down.
Yeah.
Or my mom. But that those that I love most are the ones I want to please most. And I think that's just realizing that you're not always going to be able to do that, but that's okay.
Yeah. So really, the title of this vlog or plog now what is Christians Make Bad Art, and the logo has the word bad crossed out to where it's just Christians Make Art. And so I'd like, what is your definition of what it means to be a Christian artist, or an artist who is a Christian?
I think very much like your speaker last week, that I read a book years ago called Addicted to Mediocrity, and it was all talking about how if you don't have to have your art have Jesus in it, or say Jesus in the lyrics, for it to be glorifying to Jesus, because he's the one that created this ability in you. And that by merely walking in the truth of your talent, you are by that glorifying God. And so it doesn't need to be about God or Jesus to still be glorifying to him. And you don't have to, when you finish everything, look at the audience and point up to Jesus. Thank you, Jesus. You're
Lift up a shout of praise.
Yeah. I mean, that can be the condition of your heart. I fully believe that God knows the condition of your heart. If you're doing something for his value and for his glory, he knows. And that's personal. That's that personal relationship with Christ. And I think, unfortunately, in this day and age of social media and nothing is personal.
Yeah.
Look at me, I'm a Christian. Type amen if you're a Christian.
Yeah.
Copy and paste if you love Jesus.
And if you don't, then you love Satan.
And I keep thinking, you think Jesus is sitting on Facebook going, okay, Andrea, there you go. You copy and pasted.
Yeah.
You love me. And I almost feel bound to do the opposite. Just to say, in my heart, God, I love you enough to not fall into that trap of, because anybody can wear a cross and not understand who's hanging on it.
Yeah, that's true.
And it drives me crazy. But it's been hard. It's been hard. But I was just telling Kasha this morning, your lovely wife, that I feel like my relationship with God is stronger than it's ever been. But I also don't think it doesn't look the same as it did when you were little.
Yeah.
I mean, you saw me seeking to do this for an audience. And now my audience is more of an audience of one rather than a big audience.
Yeah.
Even though, like I said, I still, anytime my students in my classroom drop God's name in a way that is not honoring or Jesus' name in a way that's not honoring, I say, "Oh, are you praying?" and they're like, "Oh, Miss Grace, I'm sorry." And I said, "Well, that's my friend. I wouldn't let anybody use your name in such a way either."
Yeah.
You know, and it's just important to me to be open about what matters.
Well, now you're in the unique position of, maybe you're not creating as much, but you are nurturing the young ones who are creating.
Absolutely.
And in that, you are engaged in art, the art of nurturing young artists, you know, and which I've had the, not only, you know, like me, that was a big part of my life. And not only that, but the beauty of you taking that giant leap of faith in ministry was part of what gave me the strength and the trust in God for me to take leaps like that too. And so I mean, it's true. No one else in my family took leaps like that, you know, but I did. And because you did, and for art, I mean, and so it's, I'm always like, I'm super thankful for what you did, even though it was very painful and very big. If one of the main purposes for you going through all that pain because of that leap of faith was just to give me the permission and the avenue to take the same kind of leap for art and for God in ministry, then success, victory.
I would do it all over again.
Yeah, victory. And you're shaping young artists today, Christian or non-Christian, with, you know, just like if God has presence in your life, which he does, then you are nurturing young artists, which that is going to flow through you into them. They will be creating, and God will be a part of it, and they won't even know it. You know, and that's what's so cool. That's what's brilliant. So everything you're doing has this immense weight and power to it, and is immensely redemptive to your story. Which is why I thought it's like people have got to hear this story. So we have gone way over time on this plug.
Sorry.
No, but it's so good. It's so good. So yes, thank you so much for taking time and flying down here just to be on this.
You're welcome. And I didn't even say your nickname this whole time.
Oh gosh. But yeah, I love you. You're awesome. Thank you for being on this.
You're welcome.
Until next time, 9 followers. We'll see ya.